All right? Now, let's talk about one of my favorite techniques for getting rid of garbage. Okay? We call this the gray room. The gray room is a very, very simple technique. You have stored in your body, both consciously and unconsciously, stuff. That's a technical term. I won't give you the definition yet because I haven't thought of a really cool one. But your body is a repository for stored emotions. Those emotions usually take the form of some kind of tension, either in the muscle, the fascia, the acupuncture meridians, or a combination thereof, sometimes even in the organs. Over time, if you keep repeating the same patterns, you'll start to build up a physical mass there, or a very strong tension point. Anybody here do body work? Okay. If you've ever done any kind of body work, you know the minute you hit one of these spots, all kinds of things come out. They start crying, they start laughing, they start doing all kinds of weird emotional things that, from a cause and effect perspective, shouldn't be there until you take into account that the body is just one big repository of stored emotion. Okay? That's what we do because nobody taught us how to really deal with it. All right? The dynamics of your unconscious mind are such that the conscious mind, you have an experience, and usually the unconscious mind, the body, deals with it right there. That's how evolution programmed us to respond to things. But society forced us to evolve in ways our body wasn't ready to handle yet. So we evolved this thing called the critical factor, or the conscious mind. This is the part of us that says, don't think about that now, think about this. That part evolved so that if we had two competing problems, we focused on the more immediate one and put the other one aside. Like if you were busy arguing at your child for doing something bad back when you were a caveman, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex comes running out of the woods, you weren't focused on disciplining your child while the Tyrannosaurus Rex came up and ate you. That's the primitive mechanism. Unfortunately, when our society evolved, it turned into something a little bit different. How many people here have ever had company coming over and the house is a mess? Right? Now, I expect a different answer from the men in this next question than I do from the women, but I'm going to go for it anyway. When the person of importance was coming over, how many things got hurriedly stuffed under the mattress, in the closet, any place where they just were out of sight? Raise your hands. Right? And then they forgot about them. Anybody who's ever had a science experiment grow in the refrigerator know what I'm talking about? Right? Where does that behavior come from? It comes from that primal mechanism. You see, your unconscious mind does things exactly the same way for your emotional experiences. If, for some reason, you cannot deal with the emotional issue right then and there, it takes that experience, it shunts it off into a little holding area, usually in one of the meridians, the fascial body, or in the deep unconscious. And it keeps it there until such a time as you have the opportunity to process it. Right? Now, I'm going to prove this to you dramatically. How many people here have ever driven a car? Yay, good. I'm getting there. So every now and then there's always someone in the car who goes, no, not me. Right? Now, maybe you're driving along, it's a bright sunny day, you're off from work, favorite song's playing on the radio. All of a sudden a shitty memory from when you were 7 comes up. Yes? Shitty, again, it's a technical term. Right? What's that about? What's that about? It's because your unconscious mind is sitting there under here going, he's not doing anything right now. Maybe we can finally handle this! But what do we do? What do we do when that memory comes up? We say, no, I don't want to think about that. Back down into the closet, right? Well, that's how cancers get formed. That's how tumors get formed. That's how pretty much most illnesses we suffer from start. Yes, diet plays a role. Lifestyle plays a role. Usually, it's repressed emotion that's the trigger that creates the pattern. Okay? There is a pattern here. Tiger, Tyrannosaurus Rex yelling at the child. Stuffing stuff in the closet. Falls out later. Emotional baggage. Don't deal with it right now. Stuff it down. It's a meta pattern. These are the things that create the directions in our life, but they do it outside of your conscious awareness. It will systematically, your unconscious mind will systematically force you Literally, it doesn't need your permission to do this. It will systematically force you to focus only on the things that reinforce your current view of reality. And the only way to make those changes is usually through some form of intense repetition, plus effort, or emotional intensity. In hypnotic jargon, we call that a significant emotional event. It's usually traumatic or religious.
What's the difference?
What?
So what's the difference?
I won't go there. But the truth of the matter is that's something that we need to understand, because it's a pattern that all human beings have. And if you don't understand it, you can't manage it. Doesn't mean it won't manage you. Right? That's where the gray room comes in. Thought I was going to forget about this, didn't you? The gray room is what we call a blind alchemical process. What that means is using a construct that we create in our mind and in our bodies, because we have to engage the mind and the body to do this process properly. We take it into a construct that has a very simple metaphor. Pieces on the wall represent positive experiences. Other colored pieces on the wall represent less than positive experiences. By physically acting out the process of removing them and feeling our bodies shifting emotional states, we can begin to release emotional charges that we've been holding on to that we didn't even know we had. We don't even have to know what they are. That's why we start with this. Anybody here ever wash dishes? Okay. Anybody here ever do any like heavy-duty baking, like making onion soup or something like that? When that stuff comes out of the oven, does that cheese come right off? No. Right? You got to soak that sucker. Right? Well, that's what we're doing here. When we start doing techniques like gray room, there's another one we call universal solvent. What we do is we apply a global negativity clearing exercise to the mind and body that allows it to systematically remove less than positive stuff. After we're done with that process, anything that's left requires more specific attention. After you rinse out the pot, after you've soaked, there's usually some tough spots left, aren't there? That's where we go next. And we go into what we call specific negativity clearing. Okay? Okay. So, who would like to feel good? Come here, Eve. You don't want to come up? There's a lady in the back who's salivating to come up. I'll make her do it.
Oh, God. I'm going to be happy to feel good.
You feel good? Okay. This is the lovely Eve. Okay. So, I'm going to do this in a very civilian kind of way. Now, what does that mean? I'm not going to ask you to go deeply into trance, but I am going to ask you to pretend to go deeply into trance. Deeper than you've ever gone. If we break up to do this exercise, that's all I want you to do. Have your subject, your client, pretend to go into trance. If you're doing this by yourself, pretend to go into the deepest, most powerful trance you've ever been in. And really feel it. Okay? The secret to this, how many people have ever been hypnotized? Raise your hand. That you know of. Okay. Because I guarantee you've all been hypnotized numerous times that you didn't know of. Okay. Let's talk about hypnosis and trance real quick. There's only two things you need to understand. We don't care about hypnosis because hypnosis is only a process to get into a trance state. But anybody here ever watch a movie? Did you like the movie? When you went to... let's talk about a movie you really enjoyed. When you went into that movie theater and you sat down and the lights came down and the movie started, at what moment did you realize you were completely absorbed in that experience? Exactly. If you could tell me at what moment you became completely absorbed in the experience, you weren't in trance. You weren't absorbed. Right? How many people here were ever children? Duh, dude, what's up with that? Anybody here ever played pretend when you were a kid? Right? Like maybe you played soldier, or maybe you played... Were you the Queen of England or France or Belgium or whatever it was? Yes. And you had little teacups, and maybe your little stuffed animal was across the table from you. And first 5 minutes, you knew the stuffed animal was a stuffed animal. But 5 minutes later, you're having a full-blown conversation with whoever that is, right? Were you asleep? No. Were you aware of everything that was going on? Were you immensely focused? Congratulations, you're in trance. That's all you need. To the degree that you're willing to become absolutely absorbed in the experience and give yourself permission to play, you can have anything you want. To the degree that you're not allowing yourself to do that, you will hold yourself back. Do you need to know all these miraculous hypnotic inductions? No. You just need to understand two things. Absorption in the experience, narrowing focus of attention. Just pay attention to what the hell you're doing and enjoy the process. So, just real quick, Abe, I want you to think about something. I mean, this is a different technique. If we have time, we'll get into this one later. But I want to show you just one of the other things that we can do to create absorption. One of the things we want to do when we do these kind of techniques is we want to link the mind and the body. A lot of NLP-style interventions, neuro-linguistic programming, they spend a lot of time on visual constructs of manipulating where these images are in space and size and shape. But what happens a lot of times is because the person is focusing on the imagery, their mind is engaged, but their body isn't. And if we, like I said before, if we want to engage the full range of our resources, we must engage the body. And if we can calibrate change in the body, everything else must change. Okay? So the first thing we do is I want you to think of something that is a little annoying, maybe, or maybe something you don't like. Okay? Good. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to, if you could imagine it somewhere out in front of you, I want you to just reach out and touch it. Good. As you touch it, I want you to notice where in your body you feel that feeling. Good, right. Now here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at that place where you feel that feeling. And I want you to actually look inside. I want you to notice there's a color associated with that feeling.
It's black.
Good. I want you to reach in and take all of that energy out, hold it in both of your hands and look at it. Make sure all of it's in your hands. Just dig it out. Just get it all out. Excellent. Perfect. Hold it in your hands and look at it. Now, let me ask you a question. Did it change color or stay the same?
It's the same.
Good. Is it moving in a certain direction?
Yeah, it's spinning.
Good. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take it in both your hands. I want you to turn it with both your hands so it's the opposite of what it was. Good. Now what I want you to do, I want you to double the spin. Triple it. Make it unstoppable.
I'm going to take off.
That's right. Keep going. Faster, faster. Until you know it's unstoppable. Until you know it's perfectly the exact opposite of what. When you know you've got it, slam it back in and notice what happens.
Without looking at it.
Now try to feel bad.
Did you say something?
How good is that?
It's good.
Does she look stoned or what? All right.
Okay, I'm trying to.
This is a process we call neurosomatic energetic repatterning.
Wow, this is really nice. So you don't look at it before you put it in your hand.
You can if you want to, but it doesn't matter. The process is it's a bullet point process, which means you don't have to get hyper specific about it. Now, did I at any time ask her what it was? I don't need to know. Which preserves your privacy when you do this. Okay? This is a specific negativity clearing exercise. But it's designed to integrate what's going on up here with where it's stored in the body. It also does something that pretty much no other technique that's out there really does. It magnifies absorption in the experience, because not only do you have the subjective channels in her mind being activated, you have her physically taking actions in the external environment. So all of her resources do this. And everything becomes focused and absorbed. And even if she didn't believe what was going on at first, by the time she hits the second or third spin, she has no choice. Okay? You do not need to believe this stuff will work. That's what's cool about it. You just have to follow the instructions. Okay? I spent a lot of time trying to idiot-proof these techniques, because nobody will screw you up faster than your clients. All right? So this is you guys want to play with this one? Okay. We have a couple of my graduates are in here. Raise your hands if you've graduated from my program. Okay. You've done this technique before, right? I know you have, but Ryan, you had. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Let's break up. Let's have Tara and Ryan and James. You're going to take little groups and you're going to guide them through this exercise. Just real quick. Then we're going to come back. We're going to do the gray room. Would that be okay? All right.
Just go to the step one time.
Sure. It's very simple. Think of something, and it doesn't have to, we'll talk about bucket listing in a minute. Because here's the thing. Here's one of the ways your clients will screw you up. Or we'll screw ourselves up when it comes to self. How many people are into self-help? We buy books, we have a problem, we buy a book that has a cool technique in it, and then we try to use it and it doesn't work. Right? Never happened to any of you guys, right? It always works. Here's why that we have problems with that, and why I think why there's some processes that we teach that I think are useful for this. The process I'm going to teach you is called bucket listing. But the reason I had to create that was because the only time we take action on something is when it's intolerable. Which means, by definition, it is the nastiest, evilest, most foul thing in our universe, and we must get rid of it. Right? Okay. And so we go and we buy a book or we buy a technique. Right? And we take this technique that we have no history of success with. We try to follow the instructions, work on the nastiest thing that's taking up our resources, and still be absorbed in the experience. And then wonder why it doesn't work. Right? That's what we do. We buy a book, we buy a tape, that's for some kind of emotional thing or whatever. We have all this emotional stuff that we're trying to fight through in order to deal with and follow the instructions on the technique. What if we flip that around? What if we take a technique that we have so much success with that it's like we're falling out of bed, and then apply it to things that are ridiculously easy, and then just keep getting better as we get more and more levels of success with it? What do you think would happen by the time you reach all that nasty shit? Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay? So here's the thing I want you to focus on when you do this exercise. This particular exercise that you're going to be going through with our group leaders, you can make it what you want for this one. But as we get into like the gray room, or beyond the gray room, we start getting into like dealing with fears or dealing with other issues. Take the most intense level of experience that's less than positive. That becomes your 10 on a 0 to 10 scale. Cut it in half. That becomes your 5. Cut it in half. There's your 2.5, and then a 0. When we begin doing any new technique, whether it's something you learn from me or something you learn somewhere else, take this principle of bucket listing, find things that are similar or in the same family as the big thing you want to deal with, but have an emotional intensity of 0 to 1. Take the technique you're learning and use it on the little thing. And keep using it on the little thing until it's ridiculously easy. And then go up to a level 2 until it's ridiculously easy. And then a level 3 until it's ridiculously easy. And then a level 4. And you'll notice something that by the time you hit 4 or 5, sometimes even sooner depending on how quick a study you are, the process starts to automate. And what happens when we do this is that the process your unconscious mind goes through whenever it encounters something is it immediately looks at the situation and it looks for situations in your past where it's dealt with a similar thing. And then it cross-references, what did we do the last time? Now, here's a rude awakening for most people. Your mind does not sort the way you think it does. It sorts for what is familiar, not for what works and what doesn't, as a rule. Because a lot of times the way your unconscious mind comes up with ways to deal with stuff works in the short term, but in terms of long-term growth, it's really bad. I deal in my practice, I deal with a lot of very personal issues with people. A lot of it deals with sexuality and molestation. And a lot of it has to do with weight gain that comes on as a result of it. Weight gain that's more than 20 pounds is almost never because of what you're eating. It's never because of your lifestyle. It's body armor. And I don't care if you're male or female. Okay? And I'm using that example for a very simple reason. Person is the object of some unwanted sexual attention. They assume it's because they were attractive in some way. The unconscious mind, which is deeply as intelligent as you are, but not rational. It's deeply emotional. It says, well, this happened because I was attractive. If I'm not attractive, this problem won't happen to me anymore. And so you pack on the weight. And you're right. You know what? It works to a certain degree. But what are the ramifications of that decision? Right? You don't like yourself very much either after that, after a certain amount of time, if you liked yourself at all, from that event. So one of the things we need to understand is your unconscious mind is always looking to make things familiar. If it has to choose between something that is potentially threatening and could lead to a positive outcome, or something that is familiar that you've done many times before but has some pain associated with it, it'll usually default to the one that's familiar. We need to understand this. I could spend hours in my hypnosis classes. We talk a lot about this. But I want you to understand it so you can make practical use of it. Your unconscious mind sorts for what's familiar. When we use this bucket listing process, we're creating a history of success at the unconscious level. So that the minute your unconscious mind runs across a problem that you're seeking to solve, it immediately looks back to something similar. It looks at what you did and what worked, what got you out of the situation, and it sees that technique. And so it says, oh, we'll do that. And it does it again. And it works, and it gets reinforced. So what you get is the same process, but now we're using it in a way that generates the ability to change, to generalize. Does that make sense? You guys weren't planning on getting this level of depth, were you? All right? I told you I'm going to give you something you can use. Now, it sounds really complex. All it really is where is it? Reach out and touch it. Where do you feel it? Look at it. Right? Look at it with your inner eyes. Notice that there's a color associated with that feeling. What's the color? And I usually ask, sometimes I'll say, are you sure? I go, okay, yeah. Okay, well, take it out and look at it and make sure. Right? Notice what direction it's spinning. Did the color change or stay the same? It doesn't matter what they answer. Doesn't matter what they answer. The fact that they answered it is enough. Now take it in both of your hands and turn it around so it's spinning the opposite of what it was. Right? Now double the spin, triple the spin, until it's unstoppable, until you know it's unstoppable. And when you know you've got it, and only when you know you've got it, slam it back in and notice the difference. Whoosh. There's a whole lot going on there, but you don't need to know it. You just need to follow the instructions. Now here's the secret. To the degree that you have absorption, and the less you try to analyze the technique, you will have success with this. I promise you. It can't not happen. You're all wired the same way. It's based on your physiology and your neurology. It has nothing to do with what you believe. Just got to follow the instructions. So that being said, let's take 5 minutes, come back, get into your groups. We'll do this exercise, we'll come back, and we'll start taking out more trash and programming more good stuff. Go. Thank you, Ave. Give a round of applause for Ave. If anybody's too hot, let me know.